Hello my friends, this is Ian and welcome to today's video. This is episode 9 of my Inktober series and this is for prompt number 10, which is flowing. And for this one I'm doing for I guess the third video in a row, an environmental piece. I really wanted to do something with flowing water, and I came up with the idea of having some kind of a water nymph or a water sprite, some kind of a character that I could have interacting with this water in some way. So this is a female character, female sprite or water nymph, and originally I was going to have her kind of lazing on the bank of a river and then kind of trailing her arm or something into the water. After playing with the idea in my sketchbook though, I actually found I preferred the idea of having her almost entirely submerged in the stream herself, so I guess she's maybe bathing or something in it. Which in turn helped me figure out how I wanted to set up the scene. Obviously this is a water nymph, very secretive in the first place, but also if she's bathing out in the stream then she's probably going to be in a very secluded spot, so I knew that I wanted to try and make the scene feel as intimate as possible without obviously being voyeuristic. So I started with a few simple lines just to get the perspective of the scene and know where the river was roughly going to be flowing, and that allowed me to place her into the water. I mapped out her anatomy entirely so that I could give her some sense of actually being sat in the water rather than just sort of being a few islands floating on top of it. I just wanted to make sure that she was actually sitting into the scene, even though you're not going to see most of her anatomy. A lot of the details for this scene were planned out very roughly. Nothing really concrete was put down until I came to the inking. When I was doing the sketch work, I was literally just throwing in shapes and geometry which I felt might work in that particular space. For example, the reeds and the ferns and things were very scribblily done. Is that a word? I don't think that's a word. They were done with scribbled flourish. No sense of permanence to them at all. This was because I knew when it came to doing the inking, I was going to just be continuing to add different details and things into the foreground to really fill it out. Like I say, I wanted this to feel like a very intimate, very private area of this river that very secluded, maybe nobody ever really goes there, so I wanted lots of life and things on the ground, lots of things to suggest that this woodland, this area where this scene is taking place, is more than just off the beaten track. I think I modelled it quite a lot on a woodland near where I grew up called Wistman's Wood, out in the middle of Dartmoor. It has this really ancient, enchanted feel to it. There's a lot of very short oak trees which are growing over this very rocky, stony ground which is covered in moss. There's a river. It's amazing place and certainly filled with inspiration. I almost certainly got a lot of inspiration for this piece from Wistman's Wood, and I recommend it definitely be a place that you check out or go to if you ever get the opportunity. It is a little way away. Like I say, it's off the beaten track. You've got to walk out across the moor. There's no close car park or anything, but it is definitely worth it. It's a magical place. Anyway, back to the picture. Using my knowledge of the woodlands and rivers around Wistman's Wood and other areas that I've visited in the past as well, I was able to continue to add different details and features which sprang to mind for that type of habitat. So I was adding ferns in around the bases of the trees and different grasses, different bulrushes and things around the edges of the water. Technically, I think bulrushes tend to prefer still water rather than flowing water, so I made sure to keep them into areas which were maybe protected behind rocks or behind roots. So there's a batch of reeds coming out from behind the trunk, or from behind the root, which is going down into the water on the far bank, and then there's some more down in the roots of a tree on the near side bank. Also on the far left, I created an area of the far bank where it was maybe eroded a little bit underneath, and the foliage was overhanging the water with some roots and things underneath it. It's very loosely detailed, very quickly scratched in with the pen. As something that I was enjoying doing with this piece was not really focusing too hard on getting the perfect line, but kind of scratching things in and kind of giving an impression of what's there rather than actually drawing and detailing everything out. And I think for the composition and the environment itself in this particular picture, that technique worked really well and definitely lent itself to the whole thing. I kept the majority of the inking to the front or the foreground of the piece and the midground where the river was, leading up to the far bank, and then didn't really do any inking for the far woodland and forest. I wanted it to have that mystical, ethereal and misty, eerie, creepy early morning light feeling to it. And to do that, I just used the ink wash for the background with no black lines at all, and kept everything very, very loose and light. So I wasn't using any of the darker washes on it, just the lighter ones. That gave the impression of a very early morning light coming through the mist of the woodlands, and having the dark silhouette of the foreground against that really helps bring together the atmosphere of the scene, and feeling like you're looking into some kind of sacred grove and opening in the canopy of the woodland in this morning light, with this mist and this river flowing through, with this nymph bathing in the center of the scene. One of the interesting effects of doing this Inktober is that I am discovering things that I might not necessarily know how to draw, or I haven't really done any studies of in the past. The one that was highlighted during this particular piece was flowing water. For this piece, I basically used my knowledge of water physics in general to try and estimate what I felt it should look like more than anything. And to do that, I left areas where I felt the water would be calmer in areas where it's sheltered by roots and rocks and things. I left those areas lighter, or even just left it showing through to the page beneath to give it a sense that this area is not breaking up the light that's hitting it as much. For areas which were in shadow or deeper, or perhaps had something sticking out of the water like the nymph herself or the rocks in or around her, I made sure that the water was much darker to indicate that there was something below the surface. And then areas where I felt it was going to be rippling due to some kind of obstruction, be it the nymph or a rock, I made sure to leave those areas white as well, so that the ridges of the ripples were catching the light and casting them off. I then used a series of washes, both lighter and darker ones, to try and get a ripply effect whilst also being a flowing effect. So yeah, this is definitely something I'm going to sit down at some point and do a proper study of, so I can make sure that if this situation ever comes up again, then I'll be prepared. Anyway, despite this fact that the water didn't quite turn out as I wanted it to, I am really happy with the final piece. I think it turned out really well. I hope you enjoyed this video and my nonsensical ramblings. If you have, make sure to leave a like, comment, subscribe to the channel if you have not already, and as always guys, take care, and I'll see you next time.